people learn to be parents? Is it tradition, trial and error from your own parents? Maybe it's that egg you carried around in health class. What if I told you that before the egg, between the 1920s and the 1950s, there were real babies and thousands of college students helped raise them? In the 1920s, people in the United States were afraid of a lot of things: communism, immigration, women working, women voting. More women going to college exacerbated those fears. Their major of choice was often home economics, which blended laboratory science with a way to kind of reflect on home and family. Meeting the fears and problems of the day was a hallmark of a movement known as progressivism. It was popular in the US in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Progressives believed that no social problem was unsolvable, and they used science and expertise to try. Things progressives helped with include regulating child labor and making our food safer. But things progressives also did include eugenics and prohibition. They were committed to alleviating problems in the home, and they thought that having women in their roles as mothers was a way to do that. By the 1920s, most co-ed land-grant campuses had massive home economics programs. What could be a better public service to the public than ensuring those women left with a degree and a newfound respect for taking science and turning it inward toward their home and family? Reformers believed women needed this information because they were trying to resolve the long and frankly pretty shameful record of high child mortality in the United States. Improved sanitation, diet, nutrition, all progressive efforts could be used alongside science and medicine to rationalize motherhood. Women and children and the nation would all benefit. But can you teach motherhood in a laboratory? What if that laboratory was a house? Let's say it was on or near campus. Students could live there. What if that laboratory practice house had a real-life baby inside? Students could help raise it. More than a dozen colleges and universities added babies to their practice house programs. Most were land-grant schools: Iowa State, Minnesota, Cornell, and the University of Tennessee. Students lived here during their senior year for about 6 to 8 weeks. They practiced budgeting, all kinds of other sort of household activities. Babies were initially not hard to come by. Progressive era efforts to help save children from poverty and neglect had actually resulted in overflowing orphanages, foundling hospitals, and boarding homes. In 1910, there were 95,000 children in institutional care, so campus officials requested temporary custody of babies and toddlers. They got them through child services and juvenile courts. The university provided food, medicine, and clothing, and most of them were wards of the state, so they were eligible for adoption. Students took turns being the baby's mom. They kept a strict schedule. They did diaper duty and middle-of-the-night wake-ups, and sometimes stroller rides across campus. First words, first steps, teething records were all recorded in baby books. The goal was not just to teach these students motherhood. Land-grant schools' public-facing mission was important here. Rural extension agents, many of whom were home ec graduates, used information about the babies and the practice houses to circulate content across the states to other mothers as a way to help them. Newspapers, magazines, radio broadcasts often featured stories about the students and the babies. They talked about food preparation and toys, what books students were reading to babies. Brands like Gerber sponsored practice houses and provided products. As news of campus babies spread, home economics departments got requests to adopt the children. Alumni tried to use their connections to get a baby. Desperate couples wrote heartfelt notes to faculty, but faculty were not in charge of that process. This power of adoption remained with the state and the courts. This marked a significant change in the adoptability of children on campus. Adoption during the 20s and 30s was relatively uncommon, thanks to people's beliefs in eugenics and their worries about traits that could be inherited from unwed mothers. Babies on campus had been vetted, and they seemed more guaranteed to be normal. This process remained mostly unchanged until after World War II, when campuses were rapidly changing to make room for returning GIs. It minimized women's attendance, and fewer women finished their degrees. The post-war baby boom was for biological children, but it created an adoption boom as well. In the surge to create a family by any means necessary, childless couples raced to baby brokers, adoption agencies, orphanages, and unwed pregnant women trying to find a baby. Campuses were left without space for the houses, with fewer full-time students, and eventually without babies. Historians don't just find a good story, although this is one. We think about context. Why did something happen? Why is it important? There's novelty in the notion that college students raised orphan babies and it made them more adoptable. But what did this mean for the students and the children in their care? For babies, going to campus meant love, attention, and it increased the likelihood of an adoptive home. It altered the trajectory of entire lives. For students, it put textbook learning into practice, and it imparted on them not just the sort of realities of motherhood, but also the expectations. They took those lessons home. This project highlights the intervention of expertise in parenting, and it also explains how women defended themselves against charges that a scientific college education ruined women for motherhood. And it did that by placing modernizing motherhood at the forefront of educational outcomes.